Hi, everybody, and welcome to Serious Sunday. I am Luke. I just got back from a party. It was a small affair. Matt just recently had a birthday, so we were celebrating it now that it's the weekend. It is Saturday night as of this recording. And it was a quiet affair. We didn't do a whole lot very interesting. A couple of drinks were had. We listened to some music. We talked a lot. But, I had a very interesting experience while I was over at Matt's place, insofar as I was sitting down in a chair next to Matt's son, Xander, who is about 8 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And there was nothing particularly unusual to begin with. He was sitting there next to us on his Apple laptop playing Minecraft for much of the evening. But at one point, he and a friend of ours by the name of Alex were sitting together, and Xander had downloaded and was using an application that he got off of Steam called Game Looper, which, for those of you who are not particularly familiar with it, is a game or sort of an application that you can get through Steam. It appears to be free. I'm not entirely sure. I'll be checking before I publish this video. Where you can learn to use the sort of simple visual scripting language that Game Looper comes packaged with to make fairly simple games that are based off of sort of templates, as far as I can understand. And that fascinated me. Over the course of sort of the latter half of the party, Xander was sitting there on the couch with the laptop, making a Flappy Bird clone, of all things. The game obviously was teaching him how to do it, and if he didn't know how to do it, probably with very little sort of background knowledge of the inner workings of video game development, he probably wouldn't have gotten very far. But as I sat there watching, he managed to do a very good number of things, which, included making a 8-frame, wing flapping animation for his Flappy Bird, and creating a level with those sort of vertical 2 pipes that were sort of randomly placed and moving left as the level continued onward. And I'm sure that it would get through the logic of, the game loop, starting the game and then finishing it. And, when you lose, it giving you your score and telling you to start again and so on and so forth. But what was particularly interesting to me, of course, is that, again, like Xander's a kid. He's about 8 years old. So that's some amazing stuff right there. That there are applications now that can teach children of any age, as long as they're able to read and understand basic concepts like, how to navigate through a computer, which, obviously most children of this era are fully capable of doing, perhaps even more so than a lot of older people, like myself even in some cases, are able to, make games. It's not going to be overly sophisticated. They're obviously not going to be making AAA quality content, at least not at this point in their sort of miniature video game development careers, but it's a great thing as far as I can see, and as far as I am able to parse, that a kid can make a game now with very minimal tools, and there is a support structure, there is a structure in place that allows them to do that. That's really, really awesome, and my hat is off to the people who created Game Looper. I also have, I realize that there are also like programs in schools and things of the sort. There have actually been times where people from the studio that I work at also have gone to elementary schools and other levels of school to talk about and to teach sort of basic concepts of game development to people, because, it's an interesting career path and a lot of people really kind of want to do it. At this sort of juncture in time. It's the new big media thing that a lot of people want to do. By no means is it new. I mean, it's a 30-some-odd-year-old industry at this point. Even longer. I mean, from the late 70s, basically, right? So 40-something industry. By no means is it the newest thing, but it is something that children particularly grow up with now and have access to now and want to be a part of. So, yeah, these tools give them the opportunity to actually have the chance to see if making games and being part of the process of making games is for them, is something that works for them and is interesting to them. Even if it's in the frame of, making a Flappy Bird clone, or making a clone of some sort of, twin stick shooter or something along those lines. It gives them the tools necessary. It gives them the mindset that they require in order to be able to create video games, and that's wonderful. And that got me thinking about just how extremely low the barrier to entry for video game development has become these days. And that's a wonderful thing as far as I'm concerned. There used to be a point in time in your life, in my lifetime at the very least, when the concept of making a video game, if you wanted to make video games and you really were a one-man show, then, and if they were on their own, so if they wanted to do it as a hobbyist, they would have to learn to program. There was just very little, it was an inextricable part of the process of game development. You'd have to learn BASIC or C or C++. Later on in my life, it became Java or Flash or something along those lines. And that's daunting. There's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of necessary steps and necessary foreknowledge and front-loading of knowledge and information that it becomes extremely necessary in order to do this sort of a task that is slowly being stripped away. Now, a experienced programmer is never going to be replaced. Well, I should never say never, but an experienced programmer is not going to be replaced, especially in our current world, by simple tools that make it so that they're no longer necessarily required at all ends of the video game development spectrum. Obviously, even the work that I've done in Unreal 4's Blueprint, which is an amazing and very versatile tool that allows even a developer like me, a designer particularly, who has very little background in actually developing video games, programming especially, to prototype a project long before I even need to take it to my programming team to start to actually work out the details of what functions are going to become absolutely necessary for a project and what their role is going to be and what parts of the game design are going to need to be data-driven and what isn't going to need to be data-driven and all of those certain things and what needs to be done in code. Those things are never going to really change. Well, again, never say never, but those things are not likely to change anytime soon. And the programmer is always going to be a very, very valuable part of game development. But that said, it is a great way, in my humble opinion, for children and people who, of any really age, that are interested in even just becoming hobbyists, game developers, to actually get the chance to give a shot at it. We have tools like Blueprint and the visual scripting language that Unity uses, Unity Script, I'm sure it's called. and other engines. I spoke once again very recently in a video about Adventure Game Studio in my history of adventure games. That has a little bit higher barrier to entry because it still requires you to get knowledge of sort of an object-based scripting language and be used to, or at least be willing to begin to understand syntax and things like that. But that said, even then, with enough tutorial content, it's not impossible by any means for somebody without very much knowledge of what goes into a video game to just hop onto YouTube and watch a couple of videos, not unlike the videos that were the beginning of ThursDev, although the direction of ThursDev has changed over time. And learn to do things, begin to understand concepts that otherwise they may have had to wait until high school or university, or even beyond university when they were thinking about changing their career and trying to get into games or whatever. Now they have access to that kind of information, and that's amazing to me. I think that that's a really, really awesome thing that has been happening recently. And so I recommend, whether through this Game Looper program that I saw for the first time today, or for using any other program, I don't care what it is. If you see the opportunity to teach yourself to make video games, and you want to do that, if that's something that interests you, and I assume if you're listening to this video podcast, that you have at least a passing interest in video games and the video games industry, then yeah, you owe it to yourself, really, to take a few minutes out of your day to look at something like this and learn what its tools are capable of doing so that you can make an educated decision as to whether that's something that you would personally like to continue to explore. Have an adventure. Try making a video game. Try making a clone of something. Some of the best video games on the market have been created by taking something that is already an existing formula and just tweaking it enough that it becomes a transformative experience. So, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is just there are some awesome tools out there, and anybody at this point can get a start in game development. By no means am I trying to say that making video games is not hard. Making video games is very hard, especially original video games and video games that are intended to be commercially successful. That's a daunting task. There's a lot that goes into that, but it can be done. So if you're interested in that, I urge you to give it a shot. Thanks very much for listening. That's all I really had to say tonight. It's not a particularly interesting subject, but I hope it was interesting to you, or at least got you thinking a little bit. Thanks very much. I hope to see you guys again tomorrow. Take care.